What's the best deep space roguelite you never played? Welcome back to the new show. This is Random Rob. Today I'm talking about the Infinite Space series. Specifically the three main games: Strange Adventures in Infinite Space, Weird Worlds: Return to Infinite Space, and Infinite Space 3: Sea of Stars. This series was designed by Ika Karinen and Rich Carlson. And the first game in the series, Strange Adventures in Infinite Space, which was released in 2002, I believe technically is the first roguelite computer game ever to be released. It's essentially a micro 4X game. Space exploration, empire building, space battle, shoot 'em up, digital board game that you could play in 5 to 20 minutes, with all the in-game elements being shuffled each time, so you never play the same game twice. And it's one of the great appeals of this game, is replaying it and discovering all the quests and different alien creatures and bits of technology there are to find. From what I've read about the game, the designers originally wanted to make this a much larger, deeper, complicated game, and for different reasons, including time, decided to make it a much smaller game and just break it down to its most essential components. I've spent countless hours playing these games. I enjoy them immensely, and I do think even today they're an outstanding example of the genre, and also have a wonderful kind of homebrew quality to them. Homebrew charm, if you will. Now, the first game they did, Strange Adventures, is it's the most stripped down and basic of the three. You can download it for free on their website, digitaleel.com. It's downloadable for Windows or Mac or iPhone. And although later versions of the game would add more alien species, more things to find, the first game still has all the basic elements you will find in all three games, and probably has the fastest and most aggressive combat sequences. The second game, which they released in 2005, Weird Worlds: Return to Infinite Space, this was the first version of their game that I found online, and it's my personal favorite. I really love the hand-drawn artwork for the events and different cards for things you find in the game. Each event and card also has its own distinct sound effect or little loop of music that goes with it, which is a nice touch. I love it when games have distinct themes for different events. That's something I miss a lot in more modern games. The third release, Infinite Space 3: Sea of Stars, came out in 2015. And while the first two games were played on a 2D plane, for Sea of Stars, the map section of the game is a fully 3D sphere that you can rotate and scale. It's really beautifully done, really nice to look at. The third game also gives you a lot more options for purchasing new kinds of ships. The first two games you are limited to whichever first vessel you pick, whether it's a science vessel, a pirate vessel, or a naval corvette. In the third game, if you can keep it going long enough, you can end up with heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts and so on. I've never gotten that far in that version of the game. Combat in the third game still takes place on a 2D map, but you do have the option of rotating and scaling and turning it, depending on how you want to look at it. The third game also gives you the option in combat of drawing courses for each of your ships. A note about the combat in the game, without giving too much away, I would say definitely avoid combat whenever possible early in the game until you get advanced weapons and shields, because you really won't stand a chance against some of the tougher enemies in the game. The game takes place several thousand years in the future, in an unexplored section of space called the Purple Void. And humanity has moved to an Earth-like planet in the Hope system. And this is always your starting point for the game. Gameplay proceeds by exploring the different star systems. You can set the difficulty of enemies and how much nebula mass there is in the game. You need to get special engines to travel through the nebula quickly. And this is another hint, if you're playing it for the first time, always save your engines early on in the game, because sometimes it's handy to be able to blast through unclouded space and have a nebular drive to explore the nebula. You want to keep both on you, unless you're lucky enough to find the hyperdrive, which allows you to travel, anywhere on the map with a 60-day wait in between. The game does proceed on a timer. I think you have 10 or 20 years of game time, depending how big you make the map. And each of the alien races you encounter have their own sets of weapons and styles they use in combat. There are also certain life forms and objects you can find in the game which will allow you to negotiate with certain species, so you don't have to fight them. Sometimes you will find stranded aliens and return them to their home world, and you will then get a discount to buy and sell goods at their trade bazaars. Another thing that really helps gameplay early on is to try to find the Clackar frigate. And the Clackar frigate is usually within 1 to 2 jumps of Hope at the beginning of the game. It's usually close by, and it's always worth finding because the frigate has a flat exchange rate for objects, so you can trade any object for any other object. So if they have higher end weapons and shields, for example, you can upgrade your ship right away. Makes the game a lot more fun if you can find the Clackar frigate first. This was really a game series that was ahead of its time. When it came out, roguelite wasn't even a term yet, and they originally called it a beer and pretzels space sim, meaning that you could play it quickly and that it was a casual game. And I think just because of that nomenclature, it has been a series that's been missed by a lot of people. And just if you're into roguelites or game design, or even like digital board game design, it's a terrific series to look at and a lot of fun to play. Download the original game on Digital Eel, and if you like it, definitely check out Weird World's Return to Infinite Space, because it just fleshes out that universe so much more. And especially if you're fans of older sci-fi from the 50s or 60s, sort of golden age era, it's really a great tribute to that material, especially the A.E. Van Vogt novel, The Voyage of the Space Beagle. It really draws quite a bit from that in a wonderful way. So, are there any older space roguelites or horror roguelites you enjoy? Let me know on my Patreon page, and I'll see if I can cover them in the future. Next week, I'm going to be talking about 2 sci-fi television series that were so wildly creative and innovative, they literally collapsed under their own weight by the time the shows ended. And I'm not going to tell you what they are. See if you can guess. I'll give you a hint. One of them came out in the 1960s. Alrighty, thanks for stopping in at the new show. This is Random Rob. I want to thank my new patrons on Patreon. Feel free, if you have any ideas or subjects you'd like me to talk about or questions you want to ask me, hit me up on my Patreon page. I'd love to hear from you. Alrighty, this is Random Rob for the new show, signing off. Till next time, take care.